So does that mean that it was the boot sets broken, or maybe some wild other card that they printed that's very fiery that made the deck broken, but it's brand new? Welcome everybody to episode 100 and X. X 100, 100 dash X. Can we just say that? Just like what's so I think that is funny. Like, what are you? I'm X and 2. Why can't you just give me the wins? What is it? What is it? Why does nobody want to give you the wins?
So the trick is you'll notice that I think once people hit 5 wins, they feel
Say
okay.
5-1?
They'll say they're 5 and 2. But if people are
okay.
if people are 4 and 2 or worse, they always say X2. Like when people play a 5-round tournament and they go 3 and 2, they're always like, "Yeah, finish the day X2." You're like, "How many rounds was it?" Like, just tell me the rounds or don't announce it.
Just give me the wins.
Yeah.
Give me the wins. Because I always just say, like, how are you? I'm 1 and 1.
Yeah.
I'm 2 and 1.
Yeah.
I'm 3 and 1. That's just me. I don't know. It's weird in card games with the whole X. I don't need to hear your X unless you're telling me how many wins what's going to take to get in. Then I understand the X2.
Yeah.
Unless all the rounds, and I still don't understand it. So anyway,
Yeah.
I
think they should start doing that in the NFL. It should be like,
what's your NFL? This is
what's
X.
your team's record? Oh, it's week 8. We're X and 4. It's like, so you're 4 and 4. It's like, yeah, we're X and 4.
X and 4. Yeah, I mean, because they don't go like X1X. Like if you have a tie in there, nobody goes X1X.
No, yeah.
And then they go triple X, and that's just a whole Vin Diesel thing.
Yeah.
So if you're triple X, you say Vin Diesel. What are you? I'm Vin Diesel on the day.
Diesel baby.
Yeah. So before we get into this is going to be a bad podcast because Dane's not going to be on here to rein us in because we were a little both upset about a couple things, but that's all right.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with something I never do, and that's just pat us as the Outcast Haven podcast. And sorry, I got a cold.
Yeah, that's the other reason that this might be a little bit of a dicey episode at times is if you hear us like lean away from the microphone, you might hear like a little background cough. It's because both of us are a little under the weather. Yeah.
From Battle Hardened. We are not Battle Hardened. We are sick hardened.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say what an awesome job that we did. So we had the Battle Hardened Minneapolis, head judged by Chris Bates. He didn't wear a yellow shirt. He went with a blue judge vest, and it was fucking amazing. He might have been the best judge I've ever seen. So it's something with the color of the shirt. So Bates was head judge, and then we streamed it, which obviously you've probably seen that because we've had almost 3,000 views. So awesome. We put a lot of time and effort into it to get it ready. So we appreciate everybody watching. We had Blake and Nick with the commentating. Dane judged the event, and then I participated in the event so that we could get all aspects of the event covered.
Yep.
It was Dane's first bigger event, I would say, of judging. So he just said he learned a lot from Chris and Bree about judging a big event. Was very thankful to all the things he learned. So good turnout there. Nick and Blake commentated. I came in a little bit at the end after the top 8, but it sounded like everything went pretty damn good there from what I read in the comments. I went X2, Blake, X2, or as I like to say, I went 5 and 2, took 13th. Very happy. Nick's list, who was commentating, I just took his list. Had never played the deck before the first round, and I lost the first round. So that goes to show you what happens. But I was super happy to do well. It was Oldham, a little bit different version of him than what a lot of people run, and deck was well tuned. It was a lot of fun. I played a different deck every single round for 7 rounds.
Yeah, it was a really diverse meta game.
Some could say that's interesting.
It's interesting
to play 7 different decks.
It
7 rounds.
I think the funniest thing that might have happened as a result of that metagame was that Nick went and got the info for us from like in between rounds when we went to commercial. Nick ran over real fast and grabbed the metagame breakdown, and we were talking about it, and I read it through, and I didn't realize when I said Levia had, zero representation, that was the lowest. And then somebody commented and they said, wow, Bolton didn't even get a nod. And I realized Nick just knew there's no way there's a Bolton in here. He didn't even write it on the piece of paper. He wrote down Azalea and he wrote down Levia, even though Azalea had 1 and Levia had 0. He wrote those down, but he didn't bother even writing Bolton's name. So I did announce it. Like, my brain didn't register that it was even something I should say.
I will say it was a fun event. I'm gonna go through the list of heroes that I played personally just to show you how diverse it was. I had Bravo, Dromai, Reinar, Phi, Lexi, Oldham, Icelander.
Yep.
That
checks out.
In the worst part was that I lost to both Guardians, which I used to be very good in the mirror. So
yeah.
that was my 2 losses, and I'm really upset with myself. First one is I ran wrong equipment, and Bravo did Bravo things. And then the second one was just a super, super good match all the way to the end. Probably one of the most fun matches I've had in a long time. And the mirror was amazing. And we got done with 20 minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we had people watching us that enjoyed watching the mirror. It was a fun mirror. I enjoyed it. I like watching it. And I watched some of the Oldham Fives because pretty much it just happened to get paired up to be Oldham Five for all the top 8 rounds. It's just how the bracket fell.
Yeah, I think the thing about the Battle Hard that was interesting was that we were able to get a really diverse lineup of matchups, a really diverse lineup of decks on the stream, and we weren't like searching, right? Like, we weren't digging to, table 15 to try and find something that you would normally not find. Like, we got to see Dash and Reinar and Phi and Oldham, and like we got to see a good mix of decks, and we didn't have to go digging for them. We saw a diverse pairings too. So it wasn't just Oldham versus Phi all day. Like, we saw Alexi versus the Fatigue Dash, and we saw that same Dash play into just about everything you could imagine. And seeing Oldham play Reinar and take a different take on Oldham, that was like round 1. We saw Oldham Reinar, where it's like, oh, well, Reinar has an advantage in this matchup, except John decided that he was going to bring like an extra spicy Earthlore Surge. And it was heavy on Earthlore Surges and heavy on pummels. So his whole idea was make big attacks or pummel them. It was either going to front pump or he was going to pummel everything. And that's basically what he did, was like, okay, well, it's hard for Reinar to play on less cards, so I'm just going to pummel him every turn and take a card. He's just going to have to play with 1 less card than he thinks.
Yeah, I never had a tournament that I played that diverse of decks.
Yeah.
And to me, that was super, super fun to play all the different decks. Like, it was a blast to have it like that. I don't know, it was enjoyable. It's very enjoyable. So
yeah,
I would say it was a success. And I would think that our state, with who we drew in, the people that competed, the ELO rankings of the people that competed at this event, just shows Minneapolis is a great place to hold events.
Yeah.
I mean, we got 100 people a mere 5-6 days after nationals.
Yeah.
So it was awesome. So hopefully they send more good, great English by me. Hopefully they send, give us a calling or something like that. And I don't even know are they even going to do individual callings anymore? It seems like those things are the thing in the past that they pair them up with Nats and things like that.
Stuff like that. I don't know. That's definitely something I'm curious about, is how they're going to go forward, because the next big things, we kind of talked about this. I think Nick and I were talking about this. I'm not sure if it was on the stream or just on the side, but one of the things that's interesting going forward with Fab is we've hit this growth point as a game and as a player base where these battle hardens are going to be a really important part of the like infrastructure to create like more opportunities for PTIs to get given out and things like that. But as a result of that, then it's like, well, you need to have a next scale prior to just nationals. You can't just have like battle hardens and then nationals. You have to have some callings, but what are the callings going to be? How are they going to be built?
Right.
I'm a big proponent for sure of the idea of doing callings as maybe more unique formats, and then that are like the standalone. Like when you do a standalone calling, like last year when they did the team calling, I think team blitz calling, I think that's a really great opportunity for a calling. You could do some sort of mixed event where they talk about they like all the different formats. Well, you could do an event where one person brought a CC deck, one person plays a blitz deck, one person plays commoner or something. I don't know what it is. Or you could play
Straight cash event.
a straight
Just
cash
gonna call
event.
it straight cash.
Straight
Like,
cash.
yeah, straight cash. Just pick all the categories. Just be like, here's what we're doing. $100 to get in. We're gonna bracket it down just like if you're playing poker or any big money event, and just straight cash, baby. Let's see what you got.
What if they did an event? We were just talking the other day in our group chat. You sent me to it, and I've been watching it on YouTube. Is the World Series of Board Gaming? What if they did an event like that, where every like they did it's 2 days, and the cuts were between different, kind of like what they're doing at Worlds, but they did it at a calling where, well, the beginning of the event you're gonna have to play. You're gonna play
Board game.
Something.
What? Yeah, so you could set up exactly like there, where you pick your event. Are you going to do UPF? Are you going to do CC? Are you going to do Blitz? Are you going to do Commoner? You pick one event, and if you're in the top whatever number of people it is, you make it to the final event. In the final event, you got to bring a bunch of decks because they're just going to draw it out of the hat right there.
Yep.
The event for finals is, boom, that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what they did the board game event. It was
Yeah.
this huge. Me and Blake are really into board games right now. It's just it's a money pit of never
Really,
stopping.
yeah.
But they just did this thing in Vegas, and it was really cool. It would be like your Splendors, your Dune Imperiums, your Wingspans. There was like 8 games that you could qualify in, and the one game, so you sit down to play Dune Imperium, and there's like 4 people at every table. Maybe there's 20 tables, and they run it, and the winners stay. Everybody else is gone until they get down to one winner on that table. And for each of these games, they did that. And then and they did like Blood Rage, or was it? Yeah, something like, I can't remember all the names. But the final game ended up being Dune Imperium, because that's why, and I love that game. But they don't know what the final game was going to be. So you had to be versed in all these different board games.
Yeah.
So I actually liked the way it was. It was cool, and it was 25 grand or something like that for first place. It was money. People had fun. Lots of other people there playing casually. But yeah, events like that you could do at a calling. You could have a fun event,
a standalone
like
calling.
Yeah, at a calling, a standalone calling.
It would be
because
cool.
then you're not taken away from Nats and all that stuff.
Yeah, and you let the Battle Hardens do a lot of the PTI gifting out, right? And then that would spread out. Those Battle Hardens become a bigger draw to like the hyper competitive community, and the callings kind of fill an in between role of they're competitive and they're high level, but also they draw in maybe people who wouldn't play a calling normally, like they wouldn't play in a big high level event. Battle Hardens become local events, but people will travel to them because they're worth a PTI, and it's worth going and playing if you have a chance at one of those. But a calling, like I've always said, one of the things that they did, we were a part of the community back then, but in New Zealand, that I've always thought, man, that some format like that would be incredible, is they did a team sealed event where they got like 3 packs each, 3 WTR, 3 Crucible, and 3 Arc. And then between the 3 people, they had to build basically like a sealed deck, but they had to build one for each player out of the common pool between those 3 players. So you had
that sounds amazing.
And you would have to build, because then there's strategy, right? Like who do you build 2 really good decks, and then one guy just, it's like, hey man, if you win, it's a massive bonus, but we're going to try to build really good decks? Or do you build 3 equally good decks? Yeah, hoping that you all there. Like there's some real strategy in that. Like the team calling events were amazing. It was a ton of fun to do, and I would love if they did more calling level events.
Actually,
like that style.
That event you just said, I would 100% be a part of, with those exact 3 sets.
Mm-hmm.
WTR
Yeah,
arc, because you have null rune protection, you have all that stuff, and then as you open up the null rune protection, who gets it and how much does everybody get? Because if you're just
exactly.
gonna have a wizard, that sounds amazing. It sounds like a lot of fun.
Right.
I like it. And maybe you actually get to play the Storm Striders if you open them an event like that. I don't know. That's crazy. I don't want to talk like that right now. We'll get to that in a second. Also, I was gonna say this at the beginning of the podcast, and I totally forgot. We're gonna probably change up how we do podcasts
Yeah, a
around
little.
here.
Yeah, the order of operations.
So we think we're just gonna do 2-man pods where it'll be Blake and me and Dane, Blake and Dane, right? So that's the
Mm-hmm.
three. And then we're gonna try to do, and this isn't set in stone. I would like to do Thursday night because in New Zealand and Australia can still listen to it mid-afternoon. UK, you will not hear it live. Whatever.
You could
We
stay
don't
up late
care, I
if you're
guess.
actually
Yeah, stay up
committed.
late.
Yeah.
Right. But we might do a live one once a month. And other exciting news, Midco, which is a real internet provider, is actually putting lines in right now outside my house. So I'm gonna have like
Oh, like
real
real internet.
big boy internet. And if I do during this winter, I will probably hop on and start live streaming. Either I will live stream my first ever game on Talishar. Like I will just hop on not knowing it and people can laugh watching me fumble through it, or webcam or TTS.
Hmm.
But if I do that, I'm not going to announce it. I'm just going to hop on. So the notifications, you'll see it come on. You come on, play against me. Uh, I just, if I have good internet and it's winter and snowing outside, I'm probably just going to hop on and do
Yeah.
some live stream for the hell of it. Just, and who knows when or what, but it'll be fun.
Yeah, I think once winter gets here, we definitely I notice for us, especially as a channel, like once winter hits, it's Minnesota, so there's a certain point where you just kind of accept that. That's why Jason and I are so into board gaming, is because
Yes.
we love to play board games. Because sometimes when you live in Minnesota, you get snowed in for a few days and you just don't go anywhere. And how do you pass the time? We play board games. That's the
Yeah, and
appropriate answer.
I've been doing with my board gaming. I've been doing like games that are very good solo in 2-player because usually it's me and my wife.
Hmm.
So I got like this Too Many Bones game, which is amazing, and I just bought a bunch of expansions because I loved it. And I just got a game called Summit, the board game where you're rock climbing, which
Okay.
seemed really fun. So yeah, it's it's another addiction of board gaming because sometimes it's just easier and you need a break
Yeah.
from Fab. So I love playing Fab competitively, but usually I like to. I'm not a very good casual Fab player.
Yeah.
I guess. Like I don't like to play with a bad deck. I build lots of decks and if it's not good, I don't want to use it or
Yeah.
whatever. Except for Blitz and I'll do Cheyenne, which is always a bad deck. But other than that, it's nice just to have a casual board game here
Yeah.
and there.
Yeah, we have our board games that we play. A big thing lately for us has been to break things up has been Marvel Champions, because that is a game that I bought a long time ago. I actually bought the core set of Marvel Champions when it first came out because Marvel, I love Marvel. That's like my favorite comic books and stuff like that I read as a kid, and I love Marvel. So when they announced that they were coming out with an LCG, I was all in. So we got it and we got into it. We played it for quite a while. My wife and I love to play it. And then it started like collecting dust. We just hadn't played it in a while. I started to wonder if I should keep it. And then my son, who's 10 now, we were like, well, let's play a game, because he loves superheroes, loves like Spider-Man and any of the Spider people. He's like any of the Spider people work for him. So he played a game and then loved it. So now that's like his thing. The other day, my wife was actually out and she was at the mall, and locally there's a store called Games by James that sells that kind of stuff. And she called us and she's like, hey, do you need anything from Games by James? Just checking, sleeves or anything like that. And Zeph was like, can you get Spider, which is like the Penny Parker Spider, like the Spider suit, one from like the Spider Verse. And she's like, I was more asking like if we needed like sleeves or dice or anything like that. And he goes, can you get the Marvel Champions pack? So we like had to go all the way back in and catch up on everything we had missed. So now I was telling the group that today I was like, I've bought
So expensive.
three campaign boxes and like 6 or 7 standalone heroes, trying to catch up. But I'm almost caught up. I have like 2 heroes left. So but that's kind of like that's our thing, and I like that game too because it can be played like 1, 2, 3, or 4 players. So it's just like whoever's around, you can just grab a different hero, mix it up, but still play the same game, and it's very thematic and well designed in that sense. So
That is awesome. It's a fun game.
yeah,
I
although
played it when it
lately
originally came out, but yeah, it's good.
it's been good. I actually picked up. I'm curious if anybody ever played this. I picked up on eBay. Because Jason's a bad influence. We were talking about this today too. I'm always curious if anybody else has like the bad influence friend. Jason is always bringing up something new that I end up having to buy because I have no self control. So it's part Jason's fault and part my fault. But it's like I have a ton of Blood Bowl because Jason introduced us to Blood Bowl.
Started that.
But then there are random things that I pick up because it's like, oh, well, that seems interesting. So Jason was talking about eBay. So I was scrolling eBay the other day and I saw
That can be dangerous.
it's super dangerous. And I saw an original core set of the Lord of the Rings LCG, and we've been watching Rings of Power. So I picked up, I offered a guy, I was like, you do like $12. It's just like super lowballed him to see like how far would he come down? And he was like, I could do 15. So for like $18 all in or something like that, or $20 all in, I got the Lord of the Rings LCG like core set, and now I've been playing that, and that was great solo. That's like a really good solo LCG. Tons
Yeah,
of fun.
it's nice to have. I like having games that you can play solo well. It it is dangerous because I just bought another board game before we actually got on here because of Facebook Marketplace. I got a ding, and I have like a list of games that I watch for.
Yep.
Kind of like if you're looking for cards to buy for Fab, you have your list.
Yep.
If you see them come up for cheap, you buy them. So one of those games hit, I'm like, I'm gonna have to buy that. And I went on and bought it already. So meet the guy on Saturday.
That was like my wife and I had a thing. She sent me a where was it at? We were buying some. It's Target. Because I messaged you guys about it. She was like, "Hey, they have buy one get one 50% off on board games." I'm curious if anybody else took advantage of this that's listening. But when that happened, we immediately jumped on it. And we couldn't like buy one get one 50% off, and we bought them as two separate transactions so we could get the two high priced ones and get one of the high priced ones 50% off, and then the two lower priced ones so we could get the lower priced one 50%
Yeah,
off.
been there, done that.
Work the system, man.
So now we have to talk about the evilness that happened.
The darkness.
And first, oh, so I think one of my biggest frustrations about the BNR list
Mm-hmm.
is that, like, even if you don't complain, but if you say you're dissatisfied with it, people are like, "Oh, you fucking whiners! You don't want." No.
Yeah.
If you're dissatisfied with something, and this is a service from a company, if you're dissatisfied, it's okay to say you're dissatisfied with what they had to get it. You shouldn't ever just hold that stuff in. Then it gets it really pisses you off. Usually we bitch at each other when this happens, and it turned into this fucking Blake, me, and Nick conversation that was like 8 hours long. I mean, I absolutely hated the BNR, all of it. And some people love it, some people whatever. I think it starts with the fact that I just don't understand taking Kano's boots away. I don't understand. I don't get it.
Yeah.
It's his boots. How long has he been around for with boots?
It's since Arcane Rising, so
Right.
yeah.
And is he living legend or even close?
He is at 267, which
Halfway,
about halfway.
one
Yeah.
of the longest heroes since living legend points. So does that mean that it was the boot sets broken, or maybe some wild other card that they printed that's very fiery that made the deck broken, but it's brand new? I mean, honestly, how just ban Wildfire?
Yeah.
He was fine before. Stir Forked wasn't guaranteed. He would win some, but nothing was guaranteed.
Yeah.
It didn't turn into this shit show until, I mean, we remember when we read that card, we're like, this is gonna be fucking broken in Blitz.
Yeah, we talked about that, and I mean, I think we've talked about it a ton of times since then. Every time that a BNR has come up since the printing of Wildfire, it seems like they keep dinging Kano and Blitz. It's like they took Stir and Snapback because that was the problem. Then they took, Now they've taken away the boots, and it's just like, guys, come on. The problem card is Wildfire. And for a long time, like at the first BNR, my argument was it was a new card, so they didn't want to ban the new card. And then it was also a Majestic, and they want to try and limit the number of high rarity cards. But now we've hit this point where it's like,
Legendaries.
yeah, now they're hit legendaries. Like Crown and Storm Striders are both suspended in Blitz, and it's like that's 2 legendaries, which feels super bad. And I think that I think the issue with a lot of the cards in Blitz is that we talk about Blitz all the time as a format they want to test the competitive nature in and things like that. But the game doesn't scale well because the way that they balance cards is constructed, which means that all of the cost to damage ratio is done considering 40 life as like kind of your baseline life total. Wizards are obviously different in their life total, but everybody else has 40 life, right? So they're balancing cards around, and I think that that's the key. We talk about like card balance from a design standpoint, and the most important thing that they balance around in this game is not cost. It's not, as much as we want to believe it. Everything goes back to the damage ratio of not the damage to the cost, damage to life, because they can't print cards that affect life in a way that doesn't scale appropriately. Like that's why Pulverize costs 10, because you need 3 blues and a Tunic resource to play Pulverize from your hand. And it's a huge expense to play it at 10 cost. But that's the thing. That's how they balance that card, is they say, well, it is 14 damage, but it's going to take your entire hand. So if you want to play it out of your hand and your opponent presents a bunch of damage, you have a huge decision point to make. But it's still 14, which again, it feels bad, but in constructed, we've seen people literally go, I'll take it. And then they play a Phoenix Flame for 0, and then they attack with all the rest of their cards. But in Blitz, you can't just go, I'll take 14, because now you're at 6. And literally almost any dominate or pummel, and you die to Guardian. It's like that card is not scaled for Blitz. It's just not. It doesn't work for Blitz. If somebody plays at turn 0, you could just die, or like turn 3 or 2.
That's the inherent problem with Blitz.
Yep.
Is just the fact that the attacks are all the same and the life total goes in half.
Right. You would almost need...
It literally... The game does not scale well.
Yeah, it doesn't scale well with the life totals.
No, because you still have, and this has been talked about. This isn't nothing or anything new or groundbreaking, but the fact that it doesn't scale at all. You can't
scale numbers on the cards. Yeah,
right. You have a same attack that's an 11. That's half your life in one format and a quarter your life in the other. It just it's not the same. It doesn't scale. It's
like cards like Crippling Crush with Bravo's effect scale in a horrible way to Blitz, because if you do it turn 0 in a constructed game, it's a bad play, because what's going to happen more often than not is your opponent will block with 3 or maybe a defense reaction. So they're going to cover up. They're going to take 7 or 8 damage. They're going to lose 2 cards, but then they're going to draw their hand up. They start with the life deficit, but that's it. Nothing else changes about the game. And realistically, starting at 34 compared to 40, I mean, it sucks, but it's not awful. Whereas in Blitz, if you just go like activate Bravo, Crippling Crush for 11, dominate, it's like, oh man, should I use my armor here? Because
all my armor on turn 0.
I can't take 8 damage. That means I'm not at, you're no longer looking at your life total as like, well, I'm at about 85% of it. I'm at 80% of my life or whatever. Now it's like, well, I'm at like 60% of my life. Like
60% on the first hit.
Yeah. And that's the stuff that just, it doesn't scale well. It's the reason cards like Wildfire are problematic, is because it just doesn't scale. You can't cover up enough damage to offset things. Like it just doesn't work like that. And it's the reason that like someone like Kano is pretty well scaled in Blitz, is because 15 life, again, I don't think people realize how absurdly low 15 life is. 5 to 15 is like 5 life lost to 15 feels way worse than 10 life lost to 30. I can play a 30 life
As a
game. Yeah.
as a person who has lost to Reinar in turn 0
Mm-hmm.
with Kano, 15's not great.
Yeah.
So I don't. You take a format that is a very polarized format that a lot of people don't enjoy it right now. It's kind of an all-over format, right?
Yeah.
So you take a person like me who's not a huge fan of the format, who just now went down another level because you take one of my favorite heroes and then you take away the one card. I mean, I've got it in cold foil. I have a rainbow foil, so I can, like, and it's just gone. Like that's so now and the other thing that's frustrating to me, it really pisses me off, is now you have, let's take Azalea, pretty much worthless in 2 formats.
Mm-hmm.
Kano is not, and people are like, oh, I lost my ass to Kano. I know Adam had said that I got beat by Kano without Storm Striders. That's fine. That's fine that you got beat to him. Wasn't part of that game, but as a Kano player, I have won plenty of games with never busting my Storm Striders.
Right. Yeah.
But I've seen people lose, and I lost early because I used my Storm Striders too early and didn't save them for game. So now you're taking away the one chance you have as a Kano player that you're at 8 life because you took 1 attack, okay? And now you're playing Reinar, and he goes barraging beatdown.
Yep.
So now I have to pray to, Jesus, that the right cards are going to be on top, or that my hand, if I'm playing Ragamuffins, will allow me to fix this deck and
Yeah.
magically in a way that I can now win on 1 barraging beatdown when my opponent's at, 20 life.
Yeah. I think that the issue with Kano is, like, when you talk about polarizing, Kano is definitely a polarizing hero in that he's the only hero really that feels the way he feels and you lose. You can feel like you're going to win a game and then lose to Kano. The problem is a lot of it is it's a misperception of how Kano is actually played. Because more often than not, you don't lose to Kano because he got lucky. Granted, every Kano player requires some luck at certain times, and there are plenty of matchups that I have won because I've seen the exact right card on top. However, I've also won most of my games with Kano that I've won because I know what's in my deck, I know how many resources I have, I know what I'm looking for, and I'm playing to my outs, which is no different than anybody else playing to their outs when they're sinking below to draw the blue instead of the red because they know they have more blue in their deck. And the problem with it is that Kano feels the worst to lose to a lot of times because people have this misperception that they're going to win the game because they don't properly understand Kano. That's what it comes down to. It's not that Kano got lucky. It's not that you did something. It's you were too confident in what you were doing, and as a result you got punished for it. It's like when you watch a guy make an interception and he starts to trot and he gets run down and the ball gets stripped from him at the 5-yard line, and the offense recovers the ball and runs the ball back a bunch, and they get to start over again, and now it's like 1st and 10, the offense has the ball back. It's like, that's what you were doing. You had the interception, you had the touchdown if you'd have just kept running harder. But Kano presented 4 random damage last turn. You're like, no, I'm going to get him good next turn. And you took 4 damage and you died because you were a greedy little mom. Like, you were so greedy and you got punished for it. And now you're mad about it because he high rolled me, bro. He high rolled me. It's like every matchup in this game. It's when people get mad about dying to a fused Okanold after another fused Okanold, and then they get hit with a pulverized. And it's like, it's turn 13. That didn't happen as an accident. They put those things in order, you idiot. They put those in those decks. Why did you not watch their deck when they did it? You knew it was coming.
Speaking of fused Oakenolds in the good old days of Fab, there's another card that I I understand it's strong. The fact that it's a 1 card. So I just don't like that the Pulse got banned. One, it was an awesome card in cold foil. It's another card that they did well with. And you occasionally would get lucky and fuse it. your first time through the deck, but a lot of times that didn't happen. So you would Earth Ice react, and that's what kept you in games against Phi. So as and we talked about this with Oldham, you needed to get two degenerate things in one turn against Phi. You can't do one or the other. You can't just
Yeah.
Earth Ice react because generally he'll still be able to get something through. You had to Blizzard Earth Ice react. I mean, you really have to be degenerate to Phi because it's not like it's the most amazing matchup in the world. Phi's are getting closer. I don't know if you saw a lot of the matchups, but it's not like Oldham was just running away from them. Pfizer starting to build different style decks and adjusting to the meta.
Yeah.
We still leave Belittle one of the stupidest cards ever printed in a lot of decks, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's crazy. You pay one to get three resources. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
And attack
the
for
most
3.
ridiculous card. What's that?
And attack for
And
3.
attack for
Yeah,
three.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
it was a
It,
non-attack action that said reveal a 3 or lower, go get a card called Minnowism from your deck, people would still play it. That's how good Belittle is. If Belittle was a 1-cost non-attack action that allowed you to reveal a 3 or less power attack and then go get a Minnowism, people would still play it. That's how good
it's
that
just
card is.
it's just so good, but I honestly believe, and I've not been, I don't know how you can prove this wrong. I think LSS wants this to be an aggro game.
I
They, it's the formats have always gone through aggro. Every time, every time a control deck starts to sniff around a little bit, it's been crushed down. I mean, when's the last time Mechanologist got support for control? I mean, that was the original control deck, and they're
yeah.
starting to come back again, and that's one of the only ones they haven't hit yet because it's I'm not I don't enjoy playing it. So I think a lot of players either you like that style or you don't, and a lot of people don't enjoy
Yeah.
that. It's a very to me a very monotonous way to
Yeah,
play.
I think
It's very different playing Oldham or anything else,
yeah.
especially new Oldham when you're attacking and doing a lot more.
Right. I think that the big difference between Dash and Oldham is like the turtle dash style where it just kind of plays defense until it can set up its end game and then win against a lot of decks. The biggest difference is your win con is the same in every deck. Like we kind of had that conversation in that same group chat where it's like there's a big difference between what a combo deck is and what a setup deck is. Because Kano wins by comboing you off more often than not. That's what feels bad about him.
Right. Because you
But
know your combos.
right, but good Kano players don't always play to the same combo. The deck that Arsenal Pass took to the first Pro Tour was a combo deck. It played the same combo effectively to win every game, which was to play Wildfire from Arsenal, any spell off the top for damage, and then Ragamuffin's Blazing Aether. That was the combo that it played every time, but Kano isn't a combo deck by nature. Ironically enough, Dash, like Control Dash, is almost a combo deck in that it sets up the same combo to win every turn, which
Yes.
is purifiers and chambers, and then it's going to
Chambers.
kill you
Yep.
with purifiers and chambers. And those decks they can play a little, like to your point, monotonous. They feel a little slow and ho hum along the way. But that's the reason I think more people like to play Guardian Control than like to play Dash Control. Is Dash Control feels very linear. Guardian Control is disruptive in nature. It's trying to win off of disruption and setting up big, powerful turns along the way. Like it's turn to turn disruption. It's trying to Spinal and Crippling Crush or Oakenolds or Choke Slams, and it's getting to play these big attacks. Or at worst, it's like, okay, well, I had to defend with most of my hand, but I have a hammer, and I can just smack you with my hammer, and it's still damage. And there's something
Yep.
about that inherently feels good, but I think going back to like the why do control decks get hit is I think a lot of times like these decks like Oldham, you're seeing them get hit is because they have like a really targetable thing. It's like this is the thing that makes them very powerful, so we need to try to minimize that. That was the thought.
One, that one card is good. So most Oldhams would in my opinion, and you can
Mhm.
prove me wrong, but after playing games with it, I probably fused with it 3 times
Yeah.
because a lot of times you just win too fast. Oldham's not a turtle deck. A lot of my matches were long in nature, but it wasn't. I also had some very short matches with it.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, Earth Ice React is what you do with it a majority of
Most
the
of the
time, and
time,
that's
yeah.
how I played with it, and that was very good. Some decks don't care about that. Um, some decks hate it, absolutely hate it.
Mhm.
So that's the card. But I go back to before the first Pro Tour, we had obviously Chain One, but you had so many Starvos,
Yeah.
and they banned Autumn's Touch. And in my opinion, Autumn's Touch hurt Briar more than it hurt Starvo.
Yeah, a blue earth card that blocked for 3.
In Briar
Mhm.
was really important, and you take that away. So you do that ban, which is effectively nothing because it didn't even slow him down a bit. Um, and he LL'd out super, super fast. They just let that happen. There's no consistency on the BNR, and that's why I just think they like aggro. They don't mind aggro running wild.
Yeah, I think my big thing with the blitz stuff is that historically I don't think I think if anything I've been underwhelmed with BNRs. Like I feel like they haven't touched enough. Like that's been my gripe probably up to this point. This might be the first BNR where I think they were too heavy-handed and I think they went too aggressive, and the only reason I have a problem with an aggressive ban list is if it reeks of other like ulterior motives. And in my opinion, this kind of reeks of editing a format for the Worlds tournament. Like they're specifically altering Blitz for Worlds
Yep.
by suspending Striders because I I don't get why if you think it's a real problem, if it's actually problematic, why are you not banning it or tying it to a specific hero suspension? Because that's what they've done with Crown of Seeds and Seeds of Agony is they said, well, once Chain or Oldhim is gone, these cards can come back. They're free, but they're tied to it. Whereas Stormstriders is just banned or suspended. It's suspended until the next banned and restricted list or the banned and,
Right. So if they take it off, that will be very pressing.
yeah.
But one more thing on the CC ban. So they banned Pulse. Oh Jesus, Pulse of Eisenloft. So you have Reinar that is a very good Oldhim matchup, and Reinar would be good to come up in the current format, right? He's got good matchups into several, but can't beat Fi. Even
Right.
like good Reinar players like absolutely can't beat Fi. So they hit Oldhim, which what I don't what is the accomplishment by hitting Oldhim? Because you want too much. So then why don't you bring in decks that can fight him like
Yeah.
Reinar?
Yeah.
Even Dromai is starting to get a really good matchup into them, but Dromai struggles against Fi. So Fi
Mhm.
is gatekeeping decks that would help against this control deck.
Yeah, I think one of the big things that I always have a gripe on in games historically in TCGs I've played is when formats have a deck that is clearly gatekeeping other decks and they punish a deck that has continued to evolve, because that's to me that's what Oldhim has done well, and rather than punish Oldhim players, they should be applauded for the fact that they continue to change their game plan and fight the meta and push, and then they're like, okay, well, if we keep hitting that deck, then eventually we can bring it back to the pack. And you're like, well, what if we instead approached it from a bring the pack to Oldhim mentality,
Right.
where we go, let's see what are the reasons that Oldhim is winning. Well, what's the next best most represented deck? Fi. Well, why can't Fi beat Oldhim? Because Oldhim's they've put cards like Red Chokeslam in and more pummels, and they say, well, you know what, Fi, I know that you can do a lot of damage, but you can't do it off of 2 cards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take your cards from you. and I'm not going to let you play the game with 4 and 5 card hands. And that's basically what Oldhams have done now, is they've said, I will choose to threaten your life total and rip the cards from your hand, so that way at some point you have to block me because my attacks are lethal. And instead of saying, okay, well, what hurts Oldham? Well, not making 5 stronger or Oldham weaker. What hurts Oldham is letting in some of those decks that negatively affect Oldham, because right now what is making Oldham good would punish him against some of those decks, because you couldn't go blow for blow. You can't fatigue certain decks anymore. But they don't want to touch Fi because he hasn't been winning anything. And it's like, well, he isn't winning anything because Oldham is too high, and Oldham is too high because he beats up Fi. And there's like decks like Dromai and
30% of the field is Fi, so
yeah,
it makes him look better than he is, because Fi at 38% is killing all the Reinars. Because Reinar legitimately into Oldham is a good. If you have a great Reinar player with a great Oldham player, it's actually a super fun game to watch,
yeah,
because you have to set up your pitch deck. You can watch them pitch. I played Peter in the matchup, and he conceded because we were on turn 0, because I know his strategy. I
yeah.
knew exactly what he was trying to do, and he knows I know. So it wasn't like he's hiding anything from me. But there was a point where he pitched 2 red barragings with a pummel.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I'm watching for those cards. So I'm on. That's my clock. He showed me what
Yeah.
my clock is. But I got to a point where he had to block foot with them, right? So I saw him come back out. So super fun game. And then he had other little secrets where he was able to bring some of those cards back in, which I didn't know he had those secrets. So that was new tech that he put in to bring those back. So it was a fun matchup, but never did I feel in control of that matchup, and I don't think he felt in control of that matchup, just because it's the hard matchup. And if
Mm-hmm.
Reinhardt could not get inundated with Fies, I think it would be a lot higher. And I don't think it probably has a great Icelander. I don't know though. Maybe it does. I doubt it has a great Icelander. Oh, maybe it does, because he can barrage and beat down and get rid of their
Yeah.
cards, so they just can't block. So
Yeah.
maybe it does have a good Icelander matchup too.
The other things that they've done that are interesting is, I continue to be confused by something that they've done in Blitz, I believe, um, or that they at least should do, which is, I think there needs to be I think we need to look at the possibility that maybe it's time for Sonata to go, so that way something like Bloodsheath can come back, because Bloodsheath remains one of those cards that by itself is very innocuous. Like, it doesn't do anything that powerful without the combo of Sonata. So why not either A, change the rule where XX costs can't be affected by cost reductions, or B, say, well, Sonata is banned, but Bloodsheath is back, because Viscera is a deck that has good play into the metagame. If it can play, it has a very consistent strategy, but it has 0 opportunity to win against Oldham, because it doesn't have like a big build to, even if they had to go back to like the old WinCon into it, where it was like, okay, well, I'm just going to play to a huge combo turn of something into Slogism into Ninth Blade, where I just throw 20 rune chance at Oldham and then like 15 damage behind it, and then I creeper in something and hit him again. And it's like stuff like that I don't I wish that they would explore some of those things a little bit more. But I'm curious if some of that isn't a product of, they're concerned about doing too many alterations prior to Worlds because the meta is healthy. But then again, that's an argument for, why do they need to touch Pulse at all? Just let the meta be. The meta is good. Things are healthy. And then, so it's weird to me, because it felt like they touched Constructed in a weird way, because Pulse felt unnecessary. It, like, so many people, I think a lot of the responses I saw, I don't know about you, but most of the responses I saw were, okay, that was weird. And everybody just kind of moved out. Like, I thought everybody basically said with Constructed, they were happy with it. Let's just move on. But then a lot of people seemed on board or on the side of, the blitz bans felt heavy-handed. It felt like a lot. Like they went real hard in the paint on blitz.
I think you're exactly right. They're setting the meta to something for Worlds that I don't get. I don't know what they see happening or tested stuff or know people that have tested certain stuff, but
I'll
I
leave.
I I,
I was just say
I think
I'll
that they're exactly what you just said.
yeah
This
I
is a World.
I'll say this as my final point for it, um, before we kind of end on what we think of this first Dynasty preview. But I was talking to somebody, had a conversation. I won't say a name because I don't know if they want me to say it, but they made maybe my favorite point, which was what he thinks or what they think was that Jason Chung was just beating the shit relentlessly out of all the other devs in Blitz with Kano, and they all determined that Striders was too powerful, and as a group they overthrew Jason and said Striders got to go, man. Striders too strong. It's too strong. Stonks are too high on Striders. They got to go.
Dogs.
So
Could be. Could be.
with that, and to end this podcast, I think we have to at least spend a minute or two because we've been going for like the perfect amount of time for a nice sweet spot. But we got to talk about this this battle axe. What do you think? What were your first thoughts when you saw it?
I thought it was pretty cool. I know a lot of people were immediately bad on it, that it's a weaker version of Dominate. And I will say, one, uh, we don't know what kind of cards we're going to get. We already have a Royal. Is he Draconic too, or is he just Royal Wizard?
The Emperor?
And yeah,
He's Royal Draconic.
right. So
Wizard, warrior wizard.
he could be pitching reds, use flame scale with the thing to make some fancy stuff happen. Uh and it has to be buffed obviously to 7 to get the effect. But I will stand by this with the whole overpower thing. Early game, with exception of a couple things, maybe the mirror, like with Bravo, before you would send crippling crushes out non-dominated because you want to just take their hand.
Mm-hmm.
Like you didn't care about necessarily pushing damage. You were just trying to get value. So if I swing for 11, I'll let you throw 3 cards, because if I dominate, I'm not giving you the option and I'm keeping good cards in your deck. But if I don't dominate, then you're going to want to block it because you have that ability, and I take good cards from your hand. And those are less threats for me in the next turn in the future. So I didn't like to dominate until it got to the point where you dominate to win and pummel and smile and they get pissed, right? That's the Bravo dream. So I don't know on this. I think it might be really good depending on what card pool comes out with it, but I will not dismiss it as I have in the past and say this is trash, it's unplayable. It's hard to say anything like that without seeing what type of card pool we have. Is there going to be a Draconic Warrior where you can run Flame Scale and Reds and be able to pitch to get those extra resources to do fancy stuff? I love the design space that Flame Scale gave. To me, it's one of my favorite cards. Just the fact that you're pitching Reds, you're making things happen. There's just very cool design space with that card. So I don't know. I don't know right now. I
Yeah,
like it. The art's sweet.
the art is great. I hope that they do something to help it. Right now, it definitely design wise with what we have, like it needs a huge buff from something in the set, just because what it's doing is a little odd. I think that's the big thing for me, at least, is that what it's trying to accomplish, like getting to 7 power to be able to do that, just kind of feels weird. You know, we talked I think the biggest thing, it was funny because it was like
It is weird.
7 is weird mainly
It's
in
also a
warrior.
sweet ass number. And I didn't look at like a lot of the cards that can pre-buff and how
Yeah.
all those interactions and how you're going to give this go again and what hero's going to work for, or if they make a new warrior hero that says
Yeah.
pay this and it buffs it by 4. You know what I mean? It could
Right.
be
Yeah.
meant for the hero. So that's why I'm like at an I don't know.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with it is just you run into the issue of like right now, like if you look at it right now compared to what we have as a card pool, which if we've learned anything from these supplemental sets, the current card pool will remain the primary source of cards to build decks from for right now, because this is going to add some things, but like you can't build a whole deck out of any supplemental sets. You need a base out of what we have. And the big issue with trying to get to 7 is that in a warrior deck, everything buffs by 3. There's almost nothing that pre-buffs by 4. I don't think anything does pre-buff by 4. And if it does, it might, maybe it's like plow through or something. I don't know. But it's trying to get to that 4 is just weird, because it takes a lot of cards to do that. And if you want to maximize your opportunity to overpower somebody, right, then you get in a weird spot where it's like, okay, well, I want to get this overpower trigger off. It's like, well, you need all 4 cards from your hand. Well, we know how that works late game, right? Like you can't keep 4 cards later in the game unless you play to it. But then you're hoping that you can do it every single turn.
There's
I
got
don't
to
know.
be something that's going to interact with this, because even like a Warrior's Valor or something like that,
Well,
that's +3, costs
yeah,
1. You need 2 cards
we need 3 cards.
right, in that you're still like, if you have Warrior's Valor in 2 blues, right?
Yeah.
You're still not at 7 for the overpower.
Yeah. I think the big thing is, to your point, there's definitely some value in the potential of some sneaky plays where you can, pitch a red, play something, pitch a red, play something, pitch a red to flame scale, pay for your axe. But again, that's still like 4 card hands, 5 card hands that you're playing off of.
It's going to be going to have to see the card pool. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I'm excited for this set, but if it's Everfest like, where we get 100 just
random cards,
lot of cards that just look like they're like, here's my biggest gripe why I don't want PvE in this game. If they PvE this game, and we're already seeing it with prizes and things like that, they're giving us heroes that are distinctly for PvE, right?
Yeah, and cards that are like Silver Palms, a legendary that's for PvE.
Right, so they're giving us PvE cards that I want nothing to do with. I'm going to play my board games instead of PvE, just to be honest. But if me and Blake want to play a game of 2 heroes against each other, great. Do I want to go and fight Rhinar with Oldham and Fi as a team? No, I do not. I want nothing to do with that. And now you're giving me cards in this card pool that look like they're designed for PvE. So now I'm paying, half of the money, because the values aren't crazy in any collectible game right now. Half of my money is going towards something I'll never play. So I'm hoping that we don't see that in this set like we saw in Everfest.
Yeah, I really want a supplemental set of like the Crucible level. That's what we need to get back to, because the thing about Crucible is a lot of people weren't around for Crucible, and that's part of the reason that I don't think people have the perception sometimes that we do. I think we can seem like old man yells at
Crucible was insane.
Right.
It was so insane.
Yeah, like we get, sometimes people will get the perception, and that's something that we've never had that opportunity to be the old guys in a game, like the old dogs who've been around for a long time. But what Crucible did for the game, like, people don't realize how you went from Dory with Spoils of War, or Dory with Warrior's Valor, to Dory with Warrior's Valor and Spoils of War and Hit and Run. And it, like, the complexity of those decks changed so much. They meant so much to the game in terms of what they were trying to accomplish.
That when we got Chain Lightning Snapback in that
Chain Lightning and Snapback. Yeah, like cards that even at a common level with Snapback made a massive impact. Gaze the Ages, a card that no Kano player even thinks of what life was like before Gaze the Ages was a card. Like maybe the best blue in the deck that isn't Eye of Ophidia, right? Like it's stuff like that people don't realize how important Crucible was. Like, it gave Plasma Purifier to Dash in her control strategy.
We got spoilers, didn't we, for that?
We didn't get a spoiler, but we talked spoilers on the channel. Our first ever episode, we talked about
was our first spoiler
Air
World of Air
Edition.
Edition?
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
The first episode we ever made, we talked about the spoiler from Crucible of War, Gambler's Gloves. That was
Which one?
Gambler's Gloves.
Okay.
We talked about that spoiler on the channel. That was like our first episode. We talked about that. But Crucible of War was huge for the game. And I think I just want a set that's that impactful again, that gives decks cards that change the strategies of how things work. Because Kano with Snapback was a completely different deck.
That was great.
Chain Lightning, hitting Chain Lightning off the top, like
yes,
playing Blazing Aether from your arsenal in your hand.
At the top. Oh god, it was like back in my day. Wow.
Right? That's what I'm talking about. Old man yells at Sky. We're just like, give us I want a Crucible set. I remember back when we had Crucible of War as a supplemental set and everything was meaningful.
Still the best ever. It's probably that and WTR, the two best sets ever.
Yeah, I think so. Crucible, what Crucible did for the game and how it changed the function of so much. I hope that, really, really hope that Dynasty is a set that leans into that type of game-changing feel.
I have the ultimate next set.
Okay.
Return to Wraith. Dun, dun, dun.
I mean, we've never left Wraith. We've always been in Wraith is the issue.
Right, but well, how do you word it? Like it's like a WTR2, but you can't have that. You know what I mean? Just another set like that.
You could. I mean, nowadays, you remember when it used to be a big deal when movies went from naming them, the naming convention of like Rocky 1, Rocky 2, Rocky 3, and then they started changing it to where you had to name a sequel something that related to it, but you didn't want to put a number with it. Because like Ghostbusters 2, you couldn't do that again. So they started doing the naming conventions where it was like a name that was similar but different. They gave it like almost like a second line where it was like Fantastic Four, something else.
Or Ragnarok.
Yeah, they started doing
Thunder.
But now I think it's time that we re-embrace. Everything is about retro culture and like throwbacks to the 80s. It's time we go back. Give us WTR2. Give us Crucible, Crew 2. Crew 2, the return to subsets. Like, just, like you could name it something ridiculous and we would love it.
Who's on board for Crew on 2?
Crew 2. Like, I love it. I think it's a perfect naming convention. Like, let's go. It's retro. It's time we just embrace the 2 and the 3 and the 4. Like, there's something about Rocky, like Rocky 4, Rocky 3, Rocky 2. Like the Roman numerals under Rocky are cool.
Yeah, I get down with that. Ghostbusters 2 is with the ghosts going like this, and if I remember correctly, was it?
Yeah, I think it was Ecto or whatever, like the green guy. I think I say Slimer. We go to that. Slimer. There you go. It's LSS. Here's another idea. We're the Simpsons. You feel free to take it. We don't even care. We don't mind that you take our ideas. It doesn't bother us. Just as long as the game is going forward and we feel like we're a part of it, we're happy to just go along for the ride. It's okay with us.
We're here for the ride. That's all I got.
That's all I got. So thank you everybody for listening. Thanks for hanging out another week with us. We're gonna keep talking about how we do the podcast and exactly what we're gonna approach, and once we actually know, we'll share it. But as we've learned from over 2 years of experience, we don't really put anything in stone. We just kind of do what we want to do and we let it ride. And it's gone well so far. We got show notes, but they're still loose, and we expect the show to do whatever it wants to do. So we'll figure it out along the way, and hopefully you're here figuring it out with us. We did get over 1,600, so we are going to do a giveaway. I think we'll probably just announce it next week who won the set, and we'll get it mailed out to somebody. So
do that.
Thank you for helping us get to 1,600. Here's to 1,700 hopefully soon. Hopefully we don't need another Battle Hardened to do it, but you know what? If that's what it takes, LSS, help us get to 1,700. Give Minneapolis another Battle Hardened. Thank you. Or a calling or something. We'll take anything that you have to give us. But thank you everybody for listening. If you haven't liked and subscribed, please do so. Otherwise, we will see you next week. Peace.